Talk about true backpacking's MVPs. This might just be the camping world's version of a cheat code. With cutting-edge tech, top-tier safety, and unbeatable ease.
Gyeongju, a city that holds 1,000 years of history. The cherished values, preserved over time, have shaped who we are today. Now, through new encounters, we step into a better future. Sustainability, innovation. With the spirit of connection, a new millennium story begins. As APEC and Gyeongju come together. APEC meets Gyeongju.
The moment we wear it, our spirits lift. It helps us grow strong, in body and in mind. As we wear it, we learn patience and respect. The belt system motivates students to strive harder and continue growing. This uniform shapes movement into grace and turns performance into something thrilling. Now, embraced around the world, Taekwondo shares our culture, philosophy, and values with pride and spirit. Though it may seem simple, this uniform holds your passion and your journey. It belongs to Taekwondo. Wear the extraordinary. Be with Taekwondo.
In our headlines on this Thursday, October 30th, here in South Korea, US President Donald Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping meet in the southern port city of Busan for trade talks today on the margins of the APEC leaders meeting set to begin on Friday in Gyeongju. And President Lee Jae-myung holds a series of sideline summits, including with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney earlier on this Thursday to address economic and defense cooperation. Meanwhile, K-pop girl group NewJeans loses a legal battle against its record label on allegations of mistreatment and manipulation as a court rules the group's contract with ADOR remains valid. Hello and welcome to the Daily Report for this Thursday, October 30th. I'm Min San-hee. Starting today until this coming Saturday, that is November 1st, our newscast comes to you in a special format as we here at Arirang News share team coverage of South Korea's hosting of this year's APEC Forum. That being said, I now turn to our news center set up in the historic city of Gyeongju, where my colleague Pei Eun-ji is standing by live. Eun-ji, welcome, and do start us off then.
Right, Sunny, I'm here at Arirang TV's special studio set up here in Gyeongju. Right behind me is the Gyeongju APEC International Convention Center, where the APEC leaders meeting will take place over the next 2 days, starting tomorrow. And just next to that convention center is the Hilton Hotel, where U.S. President Donald Trump stayed overnight yesterday. So on the second and last day of U.S. President Donald Trump's visit to South Korea, he sat down for talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Busan. The U.S. leader said they agreed to lower tariffs on Chinese imports and that the issue over U.S. access to rare earths has been settled. Our Kim Bo-kyung tells us more.
The two leaders of the world's largest economies met each other for the first time in over 6 years. At Daremaru facility located within the Republic of Korea Air Force Base at Gimhae International Airport, the mega event of Trump-Xi meeting was held on Thursday, with the summit going on for around 100 minutes. During his opening remarks, President Trump praised Xi as a great leader and said the two countries will continue to have fantastic ties. Xi, in response, said that the two leading economies in the world having friction is normal, as each nation has different national conditions.
And we will be having some discussions. I think we've already agreed to a lot of things, and we'll agree to some more right now.
I always believe that China's development goes hand in hand with your vision to make America great again. Our two countries are fully able to help each other succeed and prosper together.
According to a short media briefing during his way back home aboard the Air Force One, Trump said the rare earth issue is settled. China reportedly decided to defer its export controls on rare earths for a year to avoid the tariffs that Trump has threatened to impose on Chinese goods. In response to Beijing agreeing to help the U.S. address the fentanyl problem, Washington agreed to reduce fentanyl-related tariffs Trump imposed from the current 20% to 10%. Trump also announced that China would immediately resume purchases of U.S. soybeans. While saying the meeting was a 12 on the scale from 0 to 10 and 10 being the best, Trump said he is to visit China in April next year, after which President Xi plans to visit either Palm Beach, Florida, or Washington, D.C. Regarding any meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, Trump said he was too busy to have a chance to talk to him, as the purpose of the visit was talks with Xi, and that he intends to come back to see Kim again. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
And South Korean President Lee Jae-myung continues his summit diplomacy in Gyeongju. This morning, the president met with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. For more, let's go live to our presidential office correspondent Song Yujin. Yujin, tell us more.
Right. Good afternoon, Eunji. President Lee met with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, who is on an official visit to South Korea, at a hotel in Gyeongju on Thursday morning. Now, this marks their second summit following their first one on the sidelines of the G7 summit in Canada in June. The two leaders reaffirmed their comprehensive strategic partnership in their opening remarks.
6.25 전쟁 당시에 27,000명이라고 하는 엄청난 규모의 군대를 파견했고 거기서 400명에 가까운 인명 손실까지 입으면서 자유 대한민국을 지키기 위해서 애써주셨습니다. 그래서 캐나다는 대한민국에 있어서 단순한 우방국을 넘어서서 동맹에 준하는 핵심 우방국가다.
We're meeting on the 10th anniversary of our free trade. We're meeting at a time when our defense cooperation is key, and very importantly, that our cultural ties continue to grow.
Now, following the summit, Seoul and Ottawa issued a joint statement announcing the launch of the ROK Canada Security and Defense Cooperation Partnership, the first of its kind for Canada in the Indo-Pacific region. And another pillar of the statement is that the two countries concluded negotiations to create a secure framework to share sensitive data between the two governments. Now, with defense topping the agenda of the summit, the two leaders also discussed South Korea's Hanwha Ocean being one of the final contenders for a roughly $44 billion submarine contract with Canada.
President Lee expressed hope that South Korea could play a leading role in strengthening Canada's defense capabilities. Prime Minister Carney said he was well aware of Korea's submarine technology and looked forward to seeing it firsthand during his visit to Hanwha Ocean Shipyard in Gyeongju on Thursday.
Now, beyond defense, the two leaders agreed to expand cooperation in energy, critical minerals, and culture as well. And throughout the day, President Lee is holding a series of bilateral summits. He just held a bilateral summit with the leaders of New Zealand and Thailand, and eyes are on his very first summit with the newly elected Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi, who arrived in South Korea today.
Right, and Eugene, there's also been a major development following yesterday's summit between Seoul and Washington, right?
You're definitely right, Inji. So U.S. President Donald Trump this morning posted on social media that he had given the approval to South Korea to build a nuclear power submarine and that the sub would be built in Philadelphia. Now, this comes after President Lee Jae-myung asked the United States to approve South Korea to secure fuel for such submarines so that it can build some, and that in exchange that would ease the burden, the U.S.'s military burden in the region. Now, under the current nuclear cooperation agreement between South Korea and the United States, Seoul is barred from using nuclear power for military purposes and from producing or importing highly enriched uranium, the fuel needed for such submarines. Now, in response to Trump's announcement, South Korea's presidential office said it welcomes Trump's decisions and that it will work closely with Washington for follow-up talks.
Right, Eugene, before we let you go, tomorrow marks the start of APEC 2025, Korea's main event, the leaders' meeting, right? What can we expect there?
So tomorrow marks the official beginning of the APEC Economic Leaders Meeting. It will be a two-day event, and it will be held under the theme, Building a Sustainable Tomorrow. Now, it will be the first day, and that there will be a first session. So the first session on Friday will be talking about boosting investment and also other areas of economic cooperation. That will be attended by the representatives of the 21 APEC member economies, as well as the Crown Prince of the United Arab Emirates and the managing director of the International Monitoring Fund. Now, as for President Lee Jae-myung, he will, of course, be chairing this meeting, and then he will have lunch with the APEC Business Advisory Council, followed by a welcome dinner in the evening. So the big event is just getting started, Inji. Back to you.
All right, Eugene, thank you for that. Do keep us updated. And President Lee Jae-myung and U.S. President Donald Trump agreed on a trade deal following their talks here in Gyeongju yesterday, a surprise breakthrough after 3 months of contentious talks. Korea will make investments worth $200 billion in cash in return for lower U.S. tariffs on cars. Our senior presidential office correspondent Yoon Jung-min reports from Gyeongju.
After the second summit between Presidents Lee Jae-myung and Donald Trump in just 2 months, a trade deal has been announced.
We reached a deal. We did a lot of different things. We had a great session.
The two leaders met in Gyeongju on Wednesday for about an hour and a half, followed by a special dinner. Among the $350 billion investment package from South Korea, $200 billion will be in cash, and the amount that Seoul pays will be capped at $20 billion a year.
The investments will be made in dollars in accordance with business progress, so they will remain within a range that South Korea's foreign exchange market can withstand.
Similar to the deal the U.S. made with Japan earlier, profits generated from Korean investments will be equally shared with the U.S. until the initial investment is recouped. The remaining $150 billion will be dedicated to cooperation for shipbuilding.
대미 투자 확대를 통해서 또 대미 구매 확대를 통해서 미국의 제조 부흥을 지원하고 조선 협력도 적극적으로 해 나가도록 하겠습니다.
As a result, the U.S. tariffs on South Korean cars will be lowered from 25% to 15%. The U.S. reciprocal tariffs will stay at 15%. Pharmaceutical and lumber items will be granted most favored nation treatment, and airplane parts and generic drugs will be free from tariffs. For Korea, there will be no additional opening of the market in the agricultural sector, such as rice and beef, given the sensitivity of the matter.
The announcement came as a surprise, with not many expecting the outcome this time, following the nearly 3-month-long tug-of-war trade talks. Eyes are now on when the tariffs will be actually lowered. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News, Gyeongju.
And at the APEC CEO Summit Korea today, global tech giants including Google, Microsoft, and TikTok garnered significant attention with their speeches focused on the need for global cooperation. Our economic correspondent Moon Ji-young reports.
No significant progress can be made without robust cooperation. This message resonated throughout all sessions of the APEC CEO Summit Korea on Thursday, as global tech and business leaders convened to discuss critical issues facing the digital world. Microsoft emphasized that a critical aspect of artificial intelligence adoption is ensuring its opportunities reach the broadest possible population, which should require robust infrastructure investments alongside local company collaborations.
I think one of the things that we've been very conscious of is ensuring that we don't expand the digital divide. I think the lesson is really thinking about how do you create the most fairly inclusive areas to grow technology adoption, and that way society as a whole benefits.
He further underscored the vital role of public-private partnerships in preventing AI from widening the digital divide. Another tech giant, Google, also identified AI as a tool of potential.
AI is global. Our regulatory frameworks must be as well. By building on common international standards, we can mitigate risks without stifling innovation, creating the public trust necessary for widespread adoption. Success in the AI era will require all of us to work in partnership.
Social media giant TikTok also underscored that unlocking digital opportunities across the APEC region fundamentally requires trust-led growth.
At TikTok, we realize that trust cannot be assumed. It must be earned every single day through our actions, our transparency, and our partnerships. Building a digital ecosystem that people feel safe to participate in requires more than just policy statements. It demands consistent investment, collaboration with local experts, and product design that is grounded in user well-being.
He also cited K-culture as a powerful example, driving massive commerce with K-pop, food, drama, and beauty trends thriving on TikTok. What these global tech leaders underscored wasn't just advanced tech, but the importance of a sustainable, responsible, and future-oriented digital ecosystem. Moon Ji-young, Arirang News, Gyeongju.
So this year's APEC has drawn a lot of global attention with high-level diplomatic events, including the Trump-Xi meeting and talks between Presidents Lee Jae-myung and Donald Trump. For more on this, here in the studio, we have Choi Sung-ah, Secretary to the President for Foreign Press Affairs. Welcome to the studio.
Hello, hi, and thank you for having me.
So we have many foreign outlets, media outlets here in Gyeongju to cover the event. How would you describe the atmosphere on the ground?
Well, as you know, we have about more than 3,300 journalists registered here at the APEC event this time. For Korea, I think of all of the major multilateral summits that we have hosted in this country, it is by far the largest number of press that have registered. There is definitely excitement in the air. It's a time of multilateral platforms are in the news right now, and that is in Gyeongju at this point. We have journalists from countries that we've never had before in Korea, so countries from economies such as France and Spain that are not part of the APEC members are here to cover the news coming out of this area, and there's definitely excitement in the air.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. And the APEC leaders meeting, the main event, will kick off tomorrow for the next 2 days. Could you tell us more about the significance of this gathering, how you think the event will be viewed by the international media?
Well, definitely, Korea, I think, has placed itself in the world where we're connecting and bridging the East and the West, and APEC is definitely the platform to do so.
Right. And it's been, 20 years since Korea last hosted APEC. That was in Busan. What message do you think this year's event in Gyeongju will send to the international media?
Well, I mean, as you know, the slogan that's been said over and over again is to connect the world and for us to innovate together. And after that, we want to prosper as a region and to have that impact throughout the world. And that message and the messages that will come out of each of the retreats and the sessions with the leaders of the economies will send that message to the world that Asia and Europe and Asia and the U.S. and all of Americas will connect together to be able to innovate and have everyone prosper at the same time.
Right, especially because so much has changed for the past 20 years, the geopolitical landscape and South Korea as well, right?
Yes, of course. And as you know, there was a big event with the President of the United States and the President of China meeting. Right. And that is only possible because we were able to provide that platform as a bridge country.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Right. Before we let you go, is there anything else you'd like to share with us today?
Well, I mean, it is very exciting times. We're hoping that the 3,300 journalists that are registered here and are enjoying the coverage and the news coming out of Seoul, that will attract the attention of all of the viewers around the world, including at Arirang TV.
Right. And is there any other events that you'd like to share with us happening here in Gyeongju, perhaps?
Well, there are many exhibitions and displays that are going on with traditional Korean relics. Much of history is shown here. It's available for the press, also available for every visitor that's coming here, and so there's so much to catch up on.
Right, a lot to look forward to. Thank you so much for coming in today.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And it's not just diplomatic and economic meetings taking center stage here in Gyeongju. From ancient Silla to APEC 2025 Korea, Gyeongju is proving that tradition never fades. Rather, it transforms. A dazzling Hanbok fashion show brought Korea's cultural beauty to the world stage. Our Park Hyubin has more.
Under the glow of nine lights, models in Hanbok, Korea's traditional attire, brought the country's timeless elegance to life. Gyeongju, the ancient city of Silla, once again shines as Korea's capital of culture. Ahead of APEC 2025 Korea, a Hanbok fashion show was held on Wednesday evening on a floating stage over Gyeongju Bridge in Gyeongju.
It's my first time seeing a Hanbok fashion show in person. My kids really enjoyed it too. I realized how beautiful Hanbok can be. It was a refreshing and joyful experience.
Set against the backdrop of the Silla-era bridge connecting the royal palace and the city gates, the runway was designed in the shape of the Korean letter Hyut. The show featured 5 symbols of Korean heritage: Korean traditional clothes, architecture, food, paper, and the alphabet with advanced technology.
This show stands out from traditional ones. Its theme is Inheriting Tradition, Flying with Technology. It features royal Silla costumes, APEC commemorative Hanbok, AI-designed pieces, and drone displays showing a new future for Hanbok culture.
The event was attended by South Korea's First Lady Kim Hae-kyung, the spouse of Canada's Prime Minister, and other distinguished guests from home and abroad, as well as locals. The world put the spotlight on Hanbok, sharing the beauty of Korea's tradition with the global audiences.
Gyeongsang-buk-do province is home to materials like silk and rami that have long supported Korea's hanbok industry. We hope to share this cultural legacy with the world.
Linking past and present, Hanbok is a living symbol of Korea's cultural spirit and evolving identity.
The Hanbok fashion show brought together Korea's timeless heritage with cutting-edge technology. It's also a stage for cultural diplomacy, sharing the beauty of tradition with the world. Park Hyubin, Arirang News, Gyeongju.
Meanwhile, many cultural events are also taking place across the historic city. One standout is a media art event where visitors can enjoy the city's night view to the fullest. Our culture correspondent Park Gun-woo takes you there.
When night falls on Korea's ancient capital, Gyeongju, the city once home to kings and queens awakens, not through rituals or history, but through light. Every 20 minutes from 6:30 p.m. until 10 p.m., Daereungwon, a royal tomb complex, turns into a massive outdoor canvas. Using light and sound delicately designed to protect the heritage site, the show brings to life the interiors of the tombs, along with relics that were discovered inside.
It's a symbolic space where our cultural roots and spirit come alive. So it goes beyond just being a visual art experience. It's a dialogue with the past and present. The media art is titled Monghwa, meaning a glowing dream. We aim to make visitors feel as if they were stepping into their dream.
As the stunning media art show continues, trying on this traditional Shilla Dynasty outfit, complete with its golden accents, is a fantastic way to truly immerse yourself in Gyeongju, the capital city of Shilla, with 1,000 years of history. Those who want this immersive experience can try it out after registering on site on a first-come, first-served basis before the weekend shows. Since the event kicked off last Friday, more than 11,000 people have already visited and enjoyed themselves.
I bet this is the first media art show ever held at a tomb anywhere in the world. I wish events like this are held regularly so that the city can grow even further. It'll be a good way to promote Gyeongju to a wider audience.
Around a fifth of the total visitors have been foreign nationals, coming from near and far during the APEC event.
I really like the thing on the hill, so the whole sound and music kind of really worked well together. Switzerland is not really known for light and art displays.
Creating an inspiration. I think my friends would like it. Yeah, I will definitely show them video of this show.
As night falls on the ancient capital, Gyeongju's royal tombs come to life, where 1,000 years of history meet the glow of modern light, through November 16th, illuminating the city's path toward the next 1,000 years. Park Geonu, Arirang News, Gyeongju.
Now that ends our team coverage of APEC-related stories here in Gyeongju for this newscast. Back to you, Sunny.
All right, Anji, thank you for the latest from the venue of this year's APEC event. Here in Seoul, we return to our regular lineup of local and international headlines. The U.S. Federal Reserve has decided to lower its benchmark interest rate by another 25 basis points. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
The U.S. Federal Reserve announced a quarter-point interest rate cut on Wednesday, marking a divided decision among policymakers. The move lowers the federal funds rate to a range of 3.75 to 4.00% and comes as the central bank works to ease concerns over tightening liquidity in money markets.
Today, the Federal Open Market Committee decided to lower our policy interest rate by a quarter percentage point.
However, with a 10-2 vote, the decision was not unanimous. Two members dissented, Governor Stephen Moran, who pushed for a larger reduction to support slowing growth, and Kansas City Fed President Jeffrey Schmidt, who opposed any cut, citing ongoing inflation risks. The split highlights growing divisions within the central bank as it navigates an uncertain economic outlook. Speaking after the meeting, U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell acknowledged the sharp differences within the committee. He cautioned that while some members favor additional easing, others want to pause. The Fed chair also noted that another rate cut in December is still uncertain.
In the committee's discussions at this meeting, there were strongly differing views about how to proceed in December. A further reduction in the policy rate at the December meeting is not a foregone conclusion. Far from it. Policy is not on a preset course.
With the Bank of Korea freezing its rates earlier this month, the gap between the two central banks' rates now stands at 1.25 to 1.50%. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And in local news, a South Korean court has ordered K-pop girl group NewJeans to honor its contract with its record label ADOR. Our Eun-jin has details.
A South Korean court on Thursday ruled that the exclusive contract that K-pop girl group NewJeans signed with agency ADOR remains valid. This means the group has lost the lawsuit, as ADOR had sued to confirm the validity of the exclusive contract. The court found insufficient grounds to support NewJeans' key claims for termination, which was that the dismissal of former CEO Min Hee-jin was a violation. The court added that the fact that Min was removed from her position as CEO does not in itself mean that a managerial vacuum was created or that ADOR became incapable of fulfilling its contractual obligations, which runs until 2029. The dispute between NewJeans and ADOR began in November 2024 when the group abruptly held a press conference announcing the termination of their exclusive contract. The label responded in December by filing a lawsuit seeking confirmation of contract validity. A dispute had arisen in August of last year when HYBE, the parent company of ADOR, allegedly forced out NewJeans mentor Min Hee-jin. The court discovered that ADOR had offered Min a revised contract valid for the remainder of her term, but it was Min who voluntarily resigned from her position as an internal director. ADOR also requested injunctions to prevent the members of NewJeans from pursuing independent activities or entering advertisement contracts without the agency's consent until the court came to a ruling, which the court accepted in March of 2025, effectively halting the group's activities altogether. The legal firm representing NewJeans stated that while the members respect the court's judgment, it was now impossible for them to return and continue normal activities under the agency, as their relationship and trust with ADOR has been completely destroyed. The firm also added that NewJeans plans to immediately file an appeal for Thursday's court ruling. 이은진, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. Hurricane Melissa continued its destructive path across the Caribbean on Wednesday, pounding Cuba and the Bahamas after making landfall in Jamaica on Tuesday as one of the strongest storms ever recorded in the region. Officials report at least 23 deaths in Haiti, 8 in Jamaica, and 1 in the Dominican Republic as flooding and landslides devastate communities. Melissa, at one point a Category 5 hurricane with 185-mile-per-hour winds, has now weakened to Category 2 but remains highly dangerous. The U.S. National Hurricane Center warns of storm surges of up to 7 feet and flooding across southeastern Cuba and the Bahamas. More than 77% of Jamaica is still without power, while damaged roads and downed communication lines hamper relief efforts. The U.S., UK, and United Nations have begun sending aid and rescue teams, though officials say the full extent of damage is still unknown. In Moscow on Wednesday, President Vladimir Putin announced that Russia had successfully tested its Poseidon nuclear-powered super torpedo, a weapon that analysts say could devastate coastal regions with radioactive ocean waves. Putin said the test took place on Tuesday, confirming the torpedo was launched from a submarine and that its nuclear propulsion system was activated for the first time. Talking to wounded soldiers at a Moscow hospital, Putin said that, quote, "there is nothing like this," boasting the Poseidon cannot be intercepted and can travel about 10,000 kilometers at speeds near 185 kilometers per hour. The test follows Russia's Burevestnik missile launch last week. Arms experts say Poseidon breaks traditional deterrence norms, carrying an estimated 2 megaton warhead capable of triggering massive underwater explosions. France's Senate approved a landmark bill adding consent to the country's rape law on Wednesday. Lawmakers say the move closes long-criticized legal gaps exposed by a high-profile sexual assault case. The new legislation redefines rape and sexual assault as any non-consensual act, requiring that consent be informed, specific, prior, and revocable, and not implied by silence or lack of resistance. The bill still requires President Emmanuel Macron's signature before becoming law. The reform follows the case of Giselle Pellicot, whose husband and dozens of others were convicted of raping her over nearly a decade, a trial that exposed what campaigners call a gray area in French law. Supporters say the change will make it easier to prosecute sexual violence and raise public awareness around mutual consent. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
To begin with, let's take a look at the weather in Gyeongju, where APEC 2025 it will be held tomorrow. It rose to 19 degrees Celsius in the middle of the day today. This cool autumn weather will continue tomorrow and Saturday, with average temperatures for this time of year. However, the skies will be mostly cloudy. It started chilly this morning with a minimum temperature of 7.7 degrees in Seoul. In the daytime, the temperature rose by more than 10 degrees. With a large daily temperature difference between day and night, you should take good care of your health by keeping yourself warm. Tomorrow morning will be milder with Seoul at 11 degrees, Busan at 13 degrees. Daily highs will move up to 19 to 22 degrees all over the country. Rain is forecast in the central regions, the Jeollado provinces, and Jeju Island between Friday night and Saturday morning. After the rain stops, it will get cold again. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That brings us to the end of the Daily Report for this Thursday, October 30th. Thank you for watching.
이 논슬립 양말의 제일 큰 특징이 땀 흡수가 잘 되고 안 미끄러진다는 거니까 우리가 지금 물을 준비했단 말이에요. 타쿠마가 덜 밀리면 이게 재미가 없으니까 빠르게 와서 쫙 서봐요. 우와! 안 가지? 너무 안 가. 안 가. 진짜 안 가. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's the critical moment that decides the match. Do socks really make a difference in performance? One wrong move here and it's game over. And just as I say that, he breaks through. And what a header! Oh, look at his footwork. No slipping at all. Thanks to the double-layer non-slip socks, he locks the feet perfectly to the ground. The grip of the polyurethane pads is incredible. It reduces muscle strain while maintaining full rebound power. These aren't just socks. This is performance-engineered tech. Introducing WeFoot non-slip technology.
How to survive in Korea. Cafes. Step 1. Find a seat. Before ordering, find a seat. Laptop, ID, smartphone, jacket, whatever that can mark your territory. But no bites. It's a little too big. Step 2. Pick up. We do not ask or call your name. We call out, B69번 고객님. The buzzer will vibrate when your order is ready at the counter. Wait, got your straw? Keep the top of the wrapper on. Doing this is more hygienic. Step 3. Cafe etiquette. If you need to use your laptop, find a seat next to a socket. No extra charge for using electricity. But if you're staying over 3 hours, how about ordering another drink or dessert? Step 4. Last bite standing. There's a mysterious custom in Korea. The last bite standing. When there's about 1 bite left of that cake, nobody will go for it. You might be tempted, but don't be hasty. Right before you get up, take the last piece saying that you simply can't waste food, or just leave it. It will save a few calories. Did you survive at the cafe? Did someone behind the counter catch your eye? Go for the same drink every single day.
오늘도 아이스 말차 라떼 드실 거죠?
You might make an impression.
Time to set the facts straight. Get Korea right.
다음 중 한국의 전통 의상은 무엇일까요? 그렇다면 한국의 전통 의상 이름은 무엇일까요?
정답은 한복입니다. 안녕하세요. 방크 청년연구원 이정호입니다. 한국 드라마와 한국 영화가 한류 팬들에게 사랑받으면서 한국 전통 의상인 한복도 주목받고 있는데요. 한국 문화 콘텐츠가 지구촌 곳곳에서 인기를 누리면서 한국과 관련된 잘못된 정보도 확산되고 있습니다. 그중에는 한복에 관한 오류 정보도 있더라고요. 제가 여러분께 한복에 대해 제대로 알려드릴게요. 곡선과 직선이 조화롭게 이루어진 한복은 단아함과 우아함이 살아있는 한국 전통 의상입니다. 또한 1600년간 이어진 고유 한복은 세계에서 제일 길며 그것은 고구려 고분 벽화와 신라 백제 유물로도 확인이 됩니다. 한국인의 정체성과 역사가 담긴 한국의 소중한 문화유산이라 할 수 있죠. 한국 바로 알리기 여러분도 함께 해주세요.
As we count down one day to the APEC leaders meeting scheduled to start on Friday, a series of sideline summits among global leaders have been making headlines. We have details on Press Perspective today. Hello and welcome to Thursday's edition of Press Perspective for October 30th here in Seoul. I'm Min San-hee. Today, our panel of foreign correspondents join me from the historic city of Gyeongju, the venue of this year's APEC Forum. I have Thomas Maresca with American news agency UPI live on the line. Thomas, I hear you're joining us from our temporary news studio setup in the city of Gyeongju.
Yes, Sunny, thanks for having me. I'm in your sort of tent-like studio here in beautiful Gyeongju.
Right. And Stephen, I also have Stephen Borowicz with Japanese weekly news magazine Nikkei Asia live on the line as well from the media center in the city of Gyeongju. Stephen, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here with this bird's eye view of all my hardworking colleagues.
Right. Thomas, we are counting down one day to the APEC leaders meeting, and ahead of this multilateral gathering, there have been a number of sideline summits among global leaders there. That being said, let's begin with the summit that has been garnering quite a bit of attention well before its start. I'm talking about the meeting between US President Donald Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping. What has been shared about that particular summit, Thomas?
Yes, Sunny. So this has really been probably the most anticipated sideline meeting of the summit. And Xi and Trump met today in Busan. Trump was leaving, Xi was arriving, and they met in Busan for about 90 minutes or maybe 100 minutes, I guess. And it seemed that it took down the temperature anyway of what had been a sort of a boiling up trade war again. Details are still kind of sparse unless something has, just come out within the last 20 minutes or half an hour. I mean, mostly what we know of the details of their talk came from what Trump said afterwards. He was on Air Force One and had a gaggle with the reporters there and mentioned some of the details. I mean, the sort of top line things seem to be he agreed to reduce tariffs by 10%. These were sort of fentanyl-linked tariffs that he had imposed, saying that China was allowing these precursor chemicals to making fentanyl into the U.S., and he had slapped an additional 20% on tariffs on China. Then he reduced that to 10%, so that brings still the overall total on tariffs is like 47% on China. And China agreed, I guess, to try to, exert more control to stop these precursor chemicals from getting out. And China also agreed to paused the planned export controls on their rare earth minerals, which was a major concern, and a major sort of leverage point that they were using ahead of this agreement. Those are extremely valuable in every sort of application, from smartphones to missiles, and China really controls the overwhelming majority of the production and the processing of them. So. Trump said that they agreed to stop these export controls, although it's just for a year. The deal is for a year, so we'll see. He said that they will renegotiate again after another year. And he said that China agreed to start buying soybeans again from U.S. farmers, which was something that they had stopped in the middle of this trade war, and that had really harmed a lot of farmers in the U.S. And those were the main takeaways. Trump said he would visit China in April, and Trump called it a great success. He said it was a 12 out of a scale of 1 to 10. And China really was more circumspect about it. They did release a readout, but it was pretty much not giving details of the agreement, but just sort of saying that it was talking about the importance of dialogue and saying that trade should sort of propel the bilateral relationship, not be a barrier. And it was not as warm, I guess I would say, as some of the other Trump bilaterals we've seen, with Lee Jae-myung and Takeichi in Japan before coming. There was no golden crown given to Trump, but at the same time, obviously I think the world is glad to see that these two superpowers talked and at least seemed to come to some basic agreements to stop, what was looking to be a really dramatic trade war. But details yet to come, and a final agreement yet to come as well.
Right. Stephen, Mr. Trump addressed the APEC CEO summit back on Wednesday. What was the gist of his message there?
Well, narrowing down the gist of that message is a little bit difficult because he spoke for a long time. And if you read the coverage of his speech, one descriptor that comes up a lot is wide-ranging. And that's a kind way of putting it, that Trump talked for a long time and talked about a lot of different things. A lot of his speech was about domestic U.S. issues, and a lot of it was kind of speaking quite favorably of his own actions as president and kind of depicting himself as a peacemaker and a deal maker and all the rest. He seemed to be in good spirits. I mean, he had a kind of a genial demeanor, and he was kind of seemed like he's kind of in his element at this sort of big gathering where he has a lot of opportunities to engage one-on-one with partner countries and to try to narrow out differences and try to come to agreements. But and I think we saw some of that on display in his meeting with President Lee last night, where the two of them were extremely cordial in the way that they interacted, and they were very complimentary of each other, and there was a real kind of tone of celebration in their engagement, and I think some of that came out in the agreement that they reached. For President Lee's part, in his opening remarks to this gathering, he talked a lot about the importance. This is a big multilateral gathering, and he talked a lot about what he sees as the importance of engaging in these kinds of multilateral formats at a time when countries are kind of more narrowly looking out for their own interests in some cases. I mean, he used a kind of difficult to translate Korean word. I think it's a jagugusanjui, which I think a lot of our foreign media outlets rendered as protectionism, but it's not. I think that misses some of the nuance. It's more kind of like prioritizing your own interests, prioritizing what your own objectives. But I mean, just before we came on today, Sunny, two key South Korean ministers gave a press conference here in the media center, and they talked a lot about how South Korea has, throughout its history, has benefited quite greatly by engaging in what they call the rules-based international order, in free trade, in open engagement with international partners, and how this country has a strong interest in continuing that and in seeing that institutions like APEC and an engagement in multilateral settings continues, and just a belief that when countries come together that they tend to be better off if they can put aside their own differences and work towards common goals. And I think Trump also spoke out in favor of those things too. I mean, he said this is not an exact quote, but he said something like getting together and making deals is better than fighting. And I think we've seen some deal making here so far in Gyeongju, and presumably we'll see some more.
Right. And beyond the remarks shared at the APEC CEO Summit, President Lee Jae-myung also has been engaging in a series of bilateral summits following his exchange with Mr. Trump back on Wednesday, of course. With regard to his engagements on this Thursday, Thomas, could you walk us through some of them?
Yes, so he met with Canada's Prime Minister Carney today. They held a bilateral meeting, and you know, from the readout of that, it seemed like they mainly actually focused on sort of defense and security issues, and Canada and South Korea signed a security and defense cooperation partnership, I believe yesterday, which is actually the first of its kind for Canada in the Asia Pacific. And, you know, they talked about sort of joint operations, exercises, training, deepening intelligence sharing, facilitating cooperation between NATO and Korea. So that, you know, that seemed to be what they sort of emphasized as far as the discussion that they had. And I think, you know, it reflects sort of where Canada is coming from in the midst of this upheaval of the sort of global order that the Trump administration is kind of imposing on the rest of the world. I mean, you know, even among allies, obviously there's been a lot of shifting and trying to maneuver and sort of react to Trump's tariffs, for example. And, you know, I think Canada in a lot of ways has reacted perhaps the most sharply, and, you know, maybe feels a sense of being let down or betrayed or you know, some way by its longtime closest ally. And I think, you know, Carney has been sort of explicit about trying to, you know, pivot a bit from Canada's overwhelming sort of economic and security dependence on the U.S. And so this is part of, I think, his aim, you know, a bit of a pivot to Asia in terms of trying to create, you know, their own paths on economic trade issues. I mean, I know Canada signed a trade deal with Indonesia last month, I believe, and you know, so also security is falling under that umbrella. And, you know, by the same token, South Korea, I mean, obviously they did, you know, seem to have a very amiable and productive meeting between President Lee and President Trump. But I think all allies are a bit on notice to try and, you know, have alternative, perhaps, you know, pathways to not be quite as reliant on the U.S., which, you know, the U.S. has made clear in terms of some of its demands on allies picking up greater defense, you know, their share of defense budgets, et cetera. He's also got, President Lee also has upcoming bilaterals with Prime Minister Takaichi from Japan today, and I believe Prime Minister Albanese from Australia. And, you know, obviously the Takaichi one is going to be of extreme interest. You know, she's just you know, newly taken the role of Prime Minister in Japan, and this is obviously a major, you know, an incredibly important relationship. So, you know, I think this will be a bit of a barometer for how it's going to proceed. I mean, I think there's been some concern from the South Korean side that she is more of a hawkish or a hardliner. She comes out kind of out of the Shinzo Abe tree. You know, she was close with him, and will that sort of impact the, you know, the sort of accord that Seoul and Tokyo have achieved over the last, you know, year or 2 years? But, you know, so far it seems like she has said the right things and said that she wants to maintain the relationship that they've had, and President Lee has also expressed that. But that will certainly be one worth watching. And, you know, Australia, don't have a ton to say. I don't know too much about it, but I think also, you know, similar to Canada in a way that Australia is trying to create its own, you know, its own relationships, and there's talk about stuff like supply chain, rare earths, and defense accords as well with South Korea.
Right. Stephen, let's pick up where Thomas left off with regard to the summit between South Korea and Japan. What appears to be the foreign media's interest in this particular summit between these two East Asian neighbors?
Well, I can talk about my own foreign media's interest, and I would say that just basically speaking, it's the first time that Lee and Takaichi will be meeting in person, and so that's it'll be interesting to see, like, if they, and Thomas alluded to some of this, like if these two leaders will be able to maintain the quite positive momentum that's existed in the bilateral relationship since basically early 2023, which came after, as we all know, a long period of friction between the two sides. I think the bilateral relationship is in quite an interesting place just because you have these two leaders who come from the camps in their respective countries that, tend to be more suspicious of the other. You have a progressive president in Lee Jae-myung who has a history of being, quite stridently opposed to engagement with Japan. And then on Takaichi's side, you have someone who's from their more kind of conservative nationalist camp and is more celebratory of Japan's imperial past and has a history of doing some of the things that can rankle neighbors like South Korea. But what we've observed so far, and we'll see if this continues, is both of these leaders moderating their stances and kind of putting their own personal politics or their own personal feelings aside in the name of maintaining this quite promising turn that the bilateral relationship has taken. And I think there's a few reasons for that. I think one of them is that the two countries, given the recent trade tensions, given the rising security concerns in the region, are really just coming to reckon with the need for them to work together. In my reporting this week, I spoke to one analyst who attributes the changes in the bilateral relationship to both Seoul and Tokyo realizing that cooperation is no longer really an option. It's something that they really need to do. And I think the reason that politicians like Lee and Takaichi have been able to make this turn is that they are, in some ways, I think, reflecting shifts in public opinion in both of their countries. I think that, and poll data supports this, that, in South Korea, views of Japan are generally quite favorable. I think a lot of South Korean people travel to Japan on tourist trips and enjoy Japanese culture. And I think a lot of them look at Japan and they do not see the imperial-minded country of the past. They see a quite forward-looking, peaceful and modern country. And I think a lot of people in Japan do the same thing. They come to South Korea on vacation. They enjoy South Korean cultural products, and they see this as a forward-looking country that it makes sense to have a forward-looking relationship with. So time will tell. But I mean, by all indications, it seems as though the two sides have come to an implicit agreement that getting along is better than having disputes over history or over anything else.
Right, cooperation being better than confrontation. Thomas, prior to her arrival here in South Korea, the Japanese Prime Minister played host to U.S. President Donald Trump in Tokyo back on Tuesday, I believe. What were your takeaways from that summit?
Right. Well, they seem to hit it off. I mean, Takaichi seems to have kind of mastered or internalized the approach that I think a lot of leaders have come to understand is the way to meet or deal with Trump, which is, he likes this kind of personal diplomacy. A lot of it is just kind of based on interpersonal, at least in terms of how they get along. And she seemed to do well with that. Trump seemed to like her. He said they were very close friends, called her a winner. And, they talked about watching the World Series. She served U.S. beef to Trump. And, she kind of knew sort of what buttons to push. I think she gave him golf-related gifts, including Shinzo Abe's putter. And, probably Trump's closest fellow leader when he was in office the first time may have been Shinzo Abe. They get along quite well, and so Takaichi is also very close to Abe. So I think they had that going for them. And they did, similar to what President Lee and Trump did. They had this big framework to discuss, and they struck a deal, but I think with still a lot of details that remain. But similar to what was going on with South Korea in terms of this large investment and how that's going to work. And in this case, Japan had agreed to a $550 billion investment in the U.S. in exchange for having tariffs lowered from 25% to 15%. And so they came to an agreement, but there's really nothing, I think, concrete yet. I'm not to say that it's easy to finalize these sorts of projects in this case, but I think there's still a lot that remains to be worked out. But we've seen names like SoftBank, Westinghouse, Toshiba, and some of the areas that they want to invest in are kind of energy related. There's some nuclear reactor factors. There's a critical mineral component. They talked about cooperating on expanding supply chains for rare earth minerals, which has become a huge factor, in just the global economy these days. And, Takaichi said she would nominate Trump for the Nobel Prize. So, I think she played her hand well. Trump seemed to like it, and they seem to at least get, the outlines of a deal made, as in with so many of these things. I mean that Trump has, been doing this week. There still remains a lot to see as far as the specifics of it and how it's really going to end up getting implemented. In some cases it's sort of solving a problem that he initiated in the first place by imposing these tariffs. So, but I think he came away with it feeling like he got what he wanted, and she seemed to. This was very, very, very early in her taking the office, so I think she also seemed to play her hand well.
And staying with takeaways, Stephen, I wonder, what would you choose to highlight with regard to Wednesday's summit between President Lee Jae-myung and Mr. Trump?
I came away with the impression that Trump seems like he's one of these kind of very big personality people that the people who are around him, his tendencies and his mannerisms kind of rub off on them. So Lee's team seemed to really buy into this idea that when you're engaging with Trump diplomatically, it makes sense to be very complimentary towards him, to kind of make him the center of attention, to not talk about your countries as collectives, as partners, but to talk about this more as an interaction between individuals. So I noticed that Lee's remarks, a lot of what he said at the outset of the meeting was really effusive praise for Trump. He described him as a peacemaker. He repeated Trump's claim that Trump has solved conflicts in 8 places around the world. And, he said that he's, under Trump's leadership, there's a new and a great America that is emerging. And then, I was surprised to see that the nature of the deal, it was not quite what I was expecting. I thought that just given the size of the amount of money that that South Korea had agreed to invest, it would take more kind of working level agreements, more kind of lower level bureaucratic engagement to be able to work out the contours of how that's going to go ahead. But they quite unexpectedly, to me at least, announced this agreement late at night, and I think it's something that both sides seem to have come away happily from. I mean, just this morning, Lee Jae-myung tweeted a very kind of a message that kind of echoed the way that Trump tends to communicate, and he said we signed a beautiful, great deal with an exclamation mark, and he said I engaged very nicely with Trump, and then Trump put out a message on Truth Social where he said. We had a great time with the great president of Korea. I think yesterday he said something like, if President Lee continues to work with me, he's going to go down as the greatest president in South Korean history. I mean, time will tell, how those remarks will age. But just going back to what we said earlier, I mean, working together is better than having confrontation. It's good to see these guys. The people of these countries of South Korea, the United States, I think, are happy to see their leaders smiling and shaking hands and coming to agreements and expressing this determination to continue to work together. There's a very old and a very comprehensive South Korea-U.S. alliance that in recent months some analysts have kind of asked questions over the long-term durability of. They've raised questions over whether or not public opinion in South Korea may be kind of turning against the United States to some limited extent, if some of what Trump was doing was engendering some kind of resentment here. So I think just taken in isolation, what we saw yesterday was a positive episode in the history of the alliance. But we'll need some more time to see. In some cases now, another kind of work begins where they still need to put this agreement in more detail on paper, and they still need to come up with mechanisms for enforcement and how they're specifically how they're going to make this all really come to pass. And so time will tell how that all works out.
Right. Thomas, what's really interesting is that during his summit talks with Chinese leader Xi Jinping, Mr. Xi Jinping actually made note of Mr. Trump's contributions to the peace brokered in the Middle East between Israel and Hamas, and also between Cambodia and Thailand, which was signed in Malaysia in the presence of Mr. Trump. This all being said, Thomas, what do you suppose are the diplomatic gains for Mr. Trump given his latest Asia trip?
Yes, you're right that she mentioned those sort of peace, related accomplishments of Trump, and although she also, hastened to add that China is also involved in working, maybe perhaps more behind the scenes on trying to, engender stability and peace in the world. But yeah, I think diplomatically, Trump probably has to look at this as a successful trip. I mean, again, just as we've repeated a few times on this program, obviously it's better to be meeting, talking to these various leaders. In his ASEAN, he was at the ASEAN summit last weekend in Malaysia, and he did, they signed, Cambodia and Thailand signed a sort of peace accord while in Trump's presence, and he's been very happy to kind of take credit for that. And he certainly made a lot of deals, I mean, with varying levels, I think, of substance to them. But, it's sort of part of the whole show. I mean, he's, kind of the center of attention wherever he goes. And a lot of these countries, I mean, especially some of these smaller Southeast Asian countries, it's very incumbent on them to try and maintain good relations with Trump. I mean, as it is, really for all countries in the world. I mean, the U.S. is still the most powerful country in that regard. And I think it just, so on the spectacle side of it, and perhaps, and to some extent on the diplomatic side, I think, it was probably everything Trump would have wanted. The question now is going back to the U.S., how does this really impact the country? I mean, what are the benefits of some of these deals? I mean, there's still tariffs in place on all of these countries. And, a lot of economists, probably most economists, are going to say that that's not really a good thing for the U.S. or the world economy. But, that's where we are. So I think, he will certainly look at it as a success. And I think for partners such as South Korea, I think South Korea can say that they got, probably the best they could have hoped for. And, yeah, it is important to maintain try and maintain this strong alliance with the U.S. So, successes on a lot of levels, but I think really there's just still so many questions that are going to have to be answered in the weeks and months to come.
Right, and hopefully we will find out in the near future then. All right, Thomas, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts today.
Thank you.
And Stephen over at the Media Center in Gyeongju, thank you very much for joining us live at this hour.
Thank you.
Right, that ends this edition of Press Perspective for this Thursday. See you same time tomorrow.
아무래도 좋아 난 너와 같을 거야 바로 지금